Hello, this is Michael Hexter, and welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. In this episode, I'll be linking a few different um, aspects of the debt ceiling confrontation. And in particular, I'm focusing on the press coverage. And this episode could be one of the put into the category of the media power series that I've been doing. But so the media have been in a typical fashion, in a way that's very much in line with some of their reporting about the right wing. And also, it's been a theme of Politics 2100 here to describe how both the press and also the Democratic Party are either misrecognizing or shielding the public or veiling the public, and also the right wing itself, from a self-consciousness or a consciousness of who they are and what they are doing. So dressing up, putting clothes on the naked emperor, so to speak, or the naked political, in this case, extreme far-right party, and putting those clothes on so that people can't see what they are and who they're doing. And also, they themselves cannot see, they cannot experience the full effects of what they're doing or understand their consequences, or at least if they understand their consequences intellectually, to not understand politically what they're running into. So that there's a kind of a cocooning, okay, of the right-wing extremism. And this is done, and I'm basing this episode a lot on the reporting of Dan Froomkin. He's a Presswatchers.org is his organization, and his blog, where he's a longtime media critic, a journalist, former Washington Post journalist, and also Al Jazeera journalist. Anyway, he has, in a very careful way, laid out in one of his recent posts about how political reporters at the Times and also at the Post are making the Democrats, and making Biden in particular, co-responsible for the debt ceiling fiasco that the Republicans essentially are 100% responsible for. And they're making it a both sides phenomenon. And this is part of, as I say, a theme of Politics 2100, where we have this enabling of right-wing extremism by journalists that are nominally liberal. Now, I'm not talking about Fox News. I'm talking about the journalists that are supposedly give an objective view of the world, and they do generally better reporting, or much better reporting, than Fox and OAN and so forth and so on. But they, or for that matter, even the Wall Street Journal, it does some better reporting than OAN and Fox. But anyway, they are supposedly open, so to speak, to the Democratic Party rather than not. And some people say they're aligned with it, but they are really, what they're doing here is that they are actually aligning themselves with the Republicans in a very stealthy way. So, for instance, Jeff Stein of the Washington Post, let me get that up again. Jeff Stein of the Washington Post is saying Biden is running out of time to avoid calamitous debt ceiling outcomes. So here the political reporter is making Biden responsible for this debt ceiling, basically hostage taking. And then we have Jim Tankersley of the New York Times saying Biden faces his first big choice on debt limit, has put President Biden on the defensive, forcing him to confront a series of potentially painful choices at a perilous economic moment. And then Tankersley, again quoting, saying business groups, fiscal hawks, and some congressional Democrats want him to make a deal. So Tankersley is magnifying the voices of supposed in between groups in between the McCarthy and the Republicans and the Democrats, and is trying to make a midpoint seem tangible, and not emphasizing what the Republicans are doing. So just to take a step back, some of you probably already following this, what's going on, and I'm making reference to debt ceiling, hostage taking, and so forth and so on. Let me just review for those people who are not familiar with it, and also add additional perspective from modern monetary theory, which is the most accurate description of the federal government's operations, or generally the monetary operations of government and also other entities. But anyway, so the debt ceiling is an antiquated drama, or not even drama, it shouldn't be a drama, but an antiquated mechanism by which once spending has been authorized, if it for some reason it goes above a certain amount and that's been already allocated, what happens with the federal government is it issues debt when it spends more than it taxes. And so the budget has already been decided. So, and Dan points out in his post, this is what's happening is the journalists are treating the debt ceiling, which is a kind of a back office operation of the federal government. It's something that happens. It's as if, and I'm using this metaphor loosely, you are not the federal government. No individual, no business is like the federal government. It's a separate, different kind of entity. But in any case, it's as if you had your unlimited debit card that you had, and you purchased something, and it's a Visa debit card, and then 3 months later, Visa comes back to you and say, do you authorize this purchase? Even though you authorized it when you signed your name on it. And this is Congress having authorized the spending, saying, no, wait a minute, we don't really authorize that spending, or we don't authorize the spending of some previous Congress, or authorize the debt issuance, the debt that is required in the procedures of the government. Now, the debt issuance itself is not necessarily necessary as modern monetary theory observes, but that is the way the laws are written, and that actually debt issuance is a benefit to financial markets, among other things. So it's not this perilous perilous situation where the U.S. government is about to go bankrupt if it adds more debt to the public debt. So anyway, the debt ceiling is something that should be automatically raised, because it's not a budgeting. If you want to have a debate about budgeting, if you decide no, we really shouldn't have money going to seniors or to Medicare or to X program or Y program, that should happen during arguments over the budget itself. And that happens before, or that is something that is before the debt ceiling, if it needs to be invoked, if that's before that happens. So anyway, so it's a matter of second guessing, and it's been used now and also 10 years ago by the Republicans as a way to second guess basically government or the budgeting process of Congress and of the government operations overall. And it's based on the fantasy economics of the Republicans. So the Republicans have a fantasy idea that that the government is an incrustation on society, that it's a imposition on society, that there's a natural market of the private sector that doesn't rely on government, and it's simply it's a matter of, especially those government programs that help ordinary people, that are peacetime expenditures, not for war and so forth and so on. Those are again, this is not a theory that is worked out, but this is in terms of their behavior. This is where, or sometimes they rely on certain theories to certainly the libertarians think they're philosopher kings, or they're philosophers and they understand economics. They think they understand economics. But anyway, their economics edits out the role of governments. And the government sort of just comes in as kind of a phantom, or as a impediment to this natural market, supposedly, that's always going to, have the best outcomes if it's undisturbed by government. Meanwhile, in reality, the government is the basis for the market. The government creates the rules for the market, and it also should provide or do reasonable boundaries on market activities when they are hurting people who are outside the market, externalities, so forth and so on, the things that happen outside of the transactions that happen in the market that hurt other people. So, or that help, that even, or that if great benefit is being provided by those, and somehow it's distributed unevenly, that they create some kind of redistribution of those benefits, so it doesn't create a windfall and distort the economy overall. So anyway, there's but a lot of those decisions are made through politics. In other words, it's not just a sort of a kind of a pure economic science that devoid of politics. It's always about, there's always some politics involved in deciding how that government does those activities that are necessary in some form or other. Okay. Anyway, but what the Republicans do is they use the debt ceiling, not only the debt ceiling, but they use that as an occasion to enact their fantasy economics about, reducing government spending, about how government is cheating, okay, on this real, or is an artificial, boost and it's, as it turns out, they are only complaining about its effects for ordinary people and the help that's given to ordinary people. And it's not stated in their theory, but the trickle down theory is actually still a good, even though it's been used a lot in political criticisms of the Republicans from different sort of angles. It is part of their religion, the economic religion that they subscribe to, that somehow all the benefits of government action should flow through the wealthiest, and through corporations and so forth and so on. So implicit in their actions, if they don't state it as, they never say we're for trickle down economics, or they don't parade that around, because that creates envy and it's bad for politics and so forth and so on. So they don't want to actually state what they're actually doing. But anyway, in reality, in terms of their actions, their revealed preferences are for that type of economic or government support for only those actors. So when they use the debt ceiling to kind of talk about how, this is all, unnecessary spending, so forth and so on, let's cut it. They are second guessing, previous administrations and previous Congresses when they do it. And then they're also trying to reinforce this message based on their fantasy economics. And also it's not only unrealistic economics, but it's also it's also ethically wrong. Okay. So it's ethically challenged, and it is then politically also, if exposed, politically damaging to them if it's exposed in its full implications. And few people really explore those implications, or at least with big megaphones. So what happens, though, if journalists come in on the side of these, or boost the message of these Republicans who are trying to cut spending using the debt limit, they are essentially, it's perhaps the media, the publishers, or the owners of these publications are coming in and saying, or somehow, if not the owners, the executive editors and so forth and so on, they're coming in on the side of a very sort of contractionary, but elitist and hierarchical vision of the American economy, and that also that in particular after the COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic, I'm sorry, and the government response to that, there has been this sort of opening that people have seen that there is a different society possible, a different relationship to government possible. And what's happening is, and I'm, in my opinion at least, I'm adding to, I mean, Dan in his piece mentions that he thinks that Tankersley and Stein know better, but they are choosing to amplify the Republican message and not to go easy on them. Now, to me, this is pretty typical of mainstream media, and also Dan has observed this in other areas, not just the debt limit, so forth and so on. That there's generally a sort of a coddling of the right wing, and they're full power hunger, they're full greed, their mendacity, all of the negative, their aggressiveness, their aggressive efforts to sabotage the well-being of other people, that's all being hidden from the American people by these journalists, and also, unfortunately, also by their nominal opponents who are not hard enough on them, who go soft on them in their critique of them. And I mean, I'm trying to model at least some of how you can talk about in ethical and both ethical and economic terms, how you can talk about what the Republicans are doing, and what's not being printed, what's not being said, and how they are trying to balance them out and saying, well, no, it's really another function is that also saying that it's the Democrats. The Democrats should be the caretakers of these impulsive, seemingly short-sighted guardians of the wealthiest and the most powerful worshipers and who are using words like fiscal prudence and so forth and so on. I will do another episode about prudence and the notion of prudence and how that's being misused in these kind of debates. But anyway, so but why the press is doing that, whether there's signals coming from the ownership or from the publishers, from the executive editors to these reporters, saying make it seem like that there's really a real issue that the Republicans have, that they have real concerns about things, rather than they're just trying to sabotage ordinary government operations. So, and this is not the contrast is between political reporters are reporting this, a right-wing extremism, a fanaticism about slashing government, a fantasy about how our civilization could work if a government was pared down to below its already quite minimal state, or relatively speaking, for the wealth of our society, so forth and so on. That so much of the sort of the product of our society, the produce of our society, and the wealth of our society goes to the top, and so little goes to ordinary people. And a mechanism, the only mechanism for leveling that out would be government action. And so what they're trying desperately to do is to make government seem fallible, the wrong mechanism, and they're creating an environment in the media, massaging facts and so forth and so on, to make it seem like there's kind of a fair, there's too prudent, or there's prudence on both sides. Okay. Anyway, in any case, so and this is an example of the media exerting power and trying to, change the reality that they're reporting on. So anyway, and the reporters would most likely who write this would probably disagree, but they have, as Dan chronicles in many of his pieces, they've fallen into and he's not the only commentator who talks about this, media critic who talks about this, this both sides, sort of horse race, both sides. They try to create a narrative where they're just these two sides that have, a real beef. Each side has its real case to make, and they're inventing on one side. They're inventing a case for the Republicans, or they're uplifting the Republicans. When in reality, their case is a naked power grab, or and an effort to really to hollow out a government that has already been affected badly by years of neglect and years of politicians being in power who believe in this Republican vision of a minimal state that won't actually support the civilization that they live in, and it will create eventually a chaotic oligarch, or more of a chaotic oligarchy than we already have. So anyway, so I'm going to stop here. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Please also like this video if you thought it was had anything in it that's worthwhile. Please subscribe to Politics 2100 and to get notice of future videos, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.